Hey there, Stephanie here, your philosophy BFF. Today, let's chat about how tech is reshaping our connection to the world. To dive into this, I'm bringing some wisdom from Václav Havel. If you follow my work, you might recall that I dropped a book on his philosophy this year. I'll share a link if you want to dig deeper into his intriguing worldview. So Havel's life was a wild ride. This guy wasn't your typical philosopher. He went from being an apprentice in a chemical lab to working as a lighting tech in a theater. And that's where he got inspired to write some mind-bending, absurdist plays. Then he switched gears to work in a brewery. Then he stood up against a totalitarian regime and became the face of a non-violent dissident movement. After spending 5 years in prison, he ended up as president of his country. Quite the journey, right? Here's a gem from one of his 1992 speeches as a president. We live in a time when the very existence of life on our planet seemed threatened. It is a time of unprecedented conflict, truly critical, when the possibilities of our technical civilization simultaneously peak and begin their decline. The grandiose work of this civilization is pushing us toward an immense precipice. The time has come to launch a kind of appeal to modern man, to reflect on his attitude towards the world, existence, himself, his loved ones, and this tiny parcel of the universe on which we live. If we carry on as if nothing had happened, relying on our ability to solve all the problems of today's world with the same means, I'm afraid the problems will get worse rather than better. Well, fast forward 30 years and it feels like we're still stuck in the same loop. We've got tons of info about global issues like climate change and AI, but it often feels like we're just spinning our wheels. The media cranks up our anxiety, making it tough to see how we can make a dent in these problems. Are future generations going to look back at us and wonder what we were doing? Is it even worth the effort? Many people think we're powerless to make a difference, and that's why I'm bringing up Havel. He had a pretty radical take on our collective fear and helplessness. For him, fear wasn't just a drag, it was a chance to rise above ourselves. Check out this quote from a 1990 speech, so he just became president. Fear should not be seen as an exclusively negative feeling. Fear of one's powerlessness can awaken new resources. Fear of God or of one's own conscience can inspire courage. Fear of failure can motivate the desire to succeed. Fear of freedom can help us find meaningful content for it. Fear of the future can force us to make it better. So Havel's view on technology sync up with other big thinkers like Heidegger, Patočka, Arendt, and Nietzsche. He thought that tech's impact on our relationship with life has major consequences, not just for humanity as a whole, but for each of us and the meaning we find in our lives. So he was influenced by Jan Patočka, who was a contemporary of his, and a philosopher that argued that to move forward with tech in a balanced way, we need to hold on to some timeless, non-technical principles. So these principles should guide us beyond just practicalities. What it means is that right now in the tech world, we're only considering ethical things about technology in a very practical way, about algorithms or very concrete things. And what this philosopher thought is that it's not how things work. You don't first work on practical things to make the big one ethical thing better. You have to think about big things and then see how they translate into something practical. Let me explain to you. So Havel took it a step further, actually. He was saying that modern life's big tragedy is our detachment from being, capital B, being, in favor of chasing short-term gains. So what's being in this context? Well, it's the essence of existence, the bigger picture. Think of it like the universe, or for believers, God. It's the ultimate reality that we're a small part of. You can call it nature, like the Greeks did in the ancient times. But as we go about our lives, we lose touch with this infinite being. I'd like to share some thoughts from Havel that he wrote in a letter to his wife from prison, reflecting on this. We are living in an age of general estrangement from being. Our civilization is based on the grandiose development of science and technology, means available to the mind to conquer the world, but which make it lose touch with being. In one of his very famous books, which is called The Power of the Powerless, Havel talks about the lack of freedom in totalitarian regimes. But he also warns about the illusion of freedom in industrial consumer societies. Even if these societies seem freer, they limit us in different ways. He saw this as an existential crisis where we've lost humility in the face of the world's mysteries. And this disconnection from the infinite, the nature, from being, from God, whatever you want to call it, is the root of it. Havel also criticized the modern approach to nature, similar to Heidegger. I think he was influenced by him. He saw that we treat nature as something to exploit for our gain. And if something can be measured, it's often deemed unimportant. And Havel argued that this mindset alienates us from nature and ultimately from ourselves. What he believes is that reality is way more complex and mysterious than we give it credit for. He reflected on this in another striking letter from prison. Watching a report on cows on television, I realized that there are no longer animals, but machines with an input, their food, and an output, the milk. Man has apprehended the world in a way that has cost him, de facto, to lose it. He has subjugated it by destroying it. Philosopher Heidegger once said that technology challenges nature to yield its resources. And Havel took this further, warning that as we dominate nature through tech, we risk viewing ourselves and others the same way, as mere resources to be used. And this reduces us to raw materials causing a machine. Havel also critiqued our short-sighted relationship with time. We chase, he believes, immediate gains over long-term consequences, like the impacts of climate change, for example. For Havel, reconnecting with the infinite, with being, nature, God, if you will, was key to restoring responsibility, both to the world and ourselves. In his book, The Power of the Powerless, Havel called for a long-term global vision to tackle these issues. I quote him, "Technology, that child of modern science, which can be considered the child of the metaphysics of our modern age, has escaped from man's hands, ceased to serve him, enslaved him, and obliged him to assist in the preparations for his own downfall." So what Havel saw was that our dependence on tech solutions was a blind spot. And for him, we cannot fix the problems that we created by a tech mindset with more of the same mindset. Actually, you might know that quote from Einstein that says, "You can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it." You might know that quote from Einstein who said, "You can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it." Well, Havel believed we need a major shift in perspective. We've got to accept that we are part of a larger whole, interconnected with all of creation, and that's the only way we'll truly respect the moral imperatives that drive real systemic change. He wrapped it up perfectly in his 1992 speech at the World Economic Forum. I want to quote him. We need to radically change man's attitude towards the world. We need to get rid of this prideful way of perceiving the world as a mathematical problem to be solved, as a machine without instructions, as a set of data for a computer necessary to obtain a universal solution. We need to understand more than we need to explain. Such an attitude could help reinforce an atmosphere of tolerant solidarity and unity in diversity, based on mutual respect, true plurality, and the parallelism of things. So, what does it mean? As we navigate today's tech challenges, maybe Havel's words kind of point us toward a path of humility, responsibility for sure, and a deeper connection to the world and each other. Let me know what you think, and see you next time. Bye.